Nothing more we can do till he becomes conscious.
I'll tell his wife. He's still unconscious, I'm afraid. We've done everything we can. But, Mrs. Ford, I must warn you, your husband has received severe burns on the face, and his eyes may be affected.
You mean permanently blind?
Possibly.
Oh, God.
Of course, we can't be sure yet until he recovers consciousness, and we can give him a detailed examination. But I think you should prepare yourself for the worst.
Martin, how did it happen, Doctor?
We don't know yet. Some sort of explosion at the foundry.
But Martin's always so careful. It couldn't have been his fault. Susan, she'll be wondering what's happened. I asked a neighbor to keep an eye on her while I was away.
The best thing you can do is to go home now.
But Martin, oughtn't I...
No. The hospital will contact you the moment he regains consciousness.
Oh, Dr. Homer, yes. You're wanted on the phone. Mr. Farrow from the foundry.
Dr. Homer here.
Farrow here, Doctor, personnel manager. What's the news on Martin Ford?
Not too good.
He's still unconscious.
Is his wife there?
She's just left.
How's she taking it?
Pretty well so far.
She asked me how the accident happened.
Well, all we know at the moment is he was die-casting brake cylinders when the furnace blew up in his face. Yeah. We're still investigating. I've got Mr. Lister, the claims inspector from the insurance company, with me. Well, that's why I wanted to check with you in case Ford was able to tell us something.
Oh, no. It may be quite a while before he regains consciousness.
Why is it so dark? What's happened to me? Let's do some more, I said. And then falling into blackness. Pain! Awful, awful pain at the back of my eyes. Is this what death is like? Pain and blackness? Mary? They'll have to look after you if I'm dead. Pay us something. I wasn't to blame for the accident. It wasn't my fault.
This is Dobson, who was Ford's backer.
How do you do?
Well, nothing's been touched since the accident happened.
Good. Now, Mr. Crowther, can you tell me how exactly is the process carried out?
Well, it's pretty simple. This pot is full of molten alloy, made out of these ingots here. You get some of the molten metal in your ladle, and you pour it into this brake cylinder mold here. Then at the end of the cart, you swirl your ladle in this plumbago mixture here, and you put it to dry in turn with your other ladles by the flue.
Plumbago?
Oh, it's a liquid containing black lead. It stops the alloy sticking to the ladle and keeps the surface smooth.
Are there any special safety precautions?
Oh, nothing except to see that your ladle and the ingots are dry before you put them in the pot.
Well, that's why the ingots are stacked on the furnace. And the casters put their ladles over there by the flue to dry off after dipping them in the plumbago.
You mean that if the ingots or the ladle were wet, that could have caused the explosion?
Well, it's a possibility. I've got our metallurgical people working on it at the moment.
What part of the process was Ford doing when the explosion took place?
Well, Dobson here can tell you that. He was working with him at the time.
Oh, well, I can't say for certain. Mind you, I was lucky. I just moved away and my back was turned. We were just knocking off for dinner break and I heard Martin say, let's do some more. And he started doing it. And then there was this terrific bang. And I turned round and Martin was lying there on the ground. And he got right in his face.
Now, I take it that when it happened, he must have been just putting the ladle into the pot.
Yes. Wouldn't you say, Tom?
Well, I suppose so.
I wonder why he decided to do more casting right at the end of the shift like that.
That's easy. We're on piecework. It's his wife's birthday next week. He was trying to get some extra money to put down a deposit on a new washing machine. We all knew about it.
Mary, it's going to be some birthday now. I was thinking about you just before the explosion. Thinking of the surprise you'd get when the new washing machine arrived. Then I remembered. Something I had to do when I got home. What was it? Why can't I remember?
Try not to worry, love. I can't stop thinking of Martin. His eyes. What's going to happen if he can't see?
Well, you don't know for certain yet. There's still hope.
He was going to night school, you know, taking his diploma in 3 months' time. He wouldn't have been doing that job anymore if he'd passed.
Well, when are you going to the hospital again?
Tomorrow. But they promised to let me know if there was any change. I gave them your phone number. You don't mind, do you?
No, of course not. And if there's anything I can do, anything at all, you just ask.
Thank you.
We've been using the same process in the casting shop for about 20 years, long before I became works manager. And there's never been an accident until now. That's right, isn't it, Jim?
All right. Well, from the point of view of the insurance company, Mr. Milsom, there are two major problems. First, the cause of the accident. How did it happen? Was there any negligence involved? And if so, on whose part?
Well, I can't say that there was any negligence on our part. And it was caused by a damp ladle.
Maybe, but we still don't know how it became damp.
Well, I should have thought that was pretty obvious. Ford dipped his ladle in the plum bagel and didn't wait long enough for it to dry before putting it in the pot.
It worries me, though. Ford was an experienced man and intelligent. Wasn't like him to make a mistake like that.
Oh, we all make mistakes. That's how it happened. You can take my word for it.
The other problem is, why wasn't he wearing his safety goggles?
Ah, well, nobody can blame the management for that. All the casters are issued with approved goggles and told to wear them.
Not only the casters. They're issued to everyone doing a job where there's a risk to eyesight. In point of fact, Ford had got his on. He pushed them up on his forehead.
It's what they all do as soon as the foreman's back's turned. We've been having a running battle with them ever since the new regulations required us to make goggles available.
I've tried everything. I've spoken to the men individually, given safety lectures, talked to the stewards to try and get the backing of the union, but the answer's always the same. They're a nuisance to wear.
Not only the goggles, it's safety equipment in general.
They get in the way, slow up production, and that affects their pay packets.
Mr. Lister, we've even discussed it at board meetings. Whether to make the wearing of goggles a condition of employment, have it written into the men's contracts.
Well, that's what some other foundries have done.
Maybe. But I know perfectly well that if we did the same thing here, a lot of men would leave. I mean, it isn't as if we had skilled labor queuing up at the gates waiting for jobs.
And the trouble is the men are on piecework. And if they think they're going to lose money, they'd rather run the risk of not wearing goggles.
And that's exactly what Ford did.
Well, I think it's very probable, if there is a claim, that we could prove contributory negligence on his part. With regard to the wearing of the goggles, that is.
And I'm sure that the accident itself was due to his negligence as well. Right?
Well, perhaps we'll know more tomorrow when we see the metallurgist report.
My goggles. They ought to have protected my eyes. But I was in a hurry. It didn't seem much of a risk to push them up on my forehead. Not just to get some more casting before the dinner break. I'm sure I didn't make a mistake. Didn't forget anything. It's hard to remember. I was... Yes. I was worried about Mary. Something dangerous I had to put right. Oh, it's all so confusing. Danger. Oh, I'm so tired.
I've been doing some calculations about the cooling speeds of the ladle. I don't think there's any doubt that the explosion was caused because a wet ladle was put in the pot. Now, the temperature of the molten metal in the furnace is 700 degrees centigrade. If water was immersed into it, it would turn into steam, which would decompose and then combine again. And up she goes.
Well, the explosion couldn't have been caused by a damp ingot.
Highly unlikely. Besides, I've examined the ladle that Ford was using. It shows definite signs of damage.
Any idea of how the ladle could have been wet?
I'm inclined to agree with Arthur Milson. Ford must have dipped it into the plumbago, forgotten about it, and then done another casting without giving it time to dry.
Why should an experienced man like Ford forget?
Well, familiarity does breed contempt, you know, particularly with more routine jobs, which become second nature. Your concentration relaxes if you allow yourself to think of other things, or if you're distracted.
Yes, I suppose so.
I've certainly done the same thing myself. I got into my car outside the factory with my head full of problems and found myself driving up to my front door without remembering anything of the journey in between.
No, it's not quite the same thing.
What's troubling you, Jim?
I don't know. It all seems so easy somehow. I just can't help thinking we've overlooked something. Look, are you quite sure there's no other way that ladle could have got wet?
You tell me.
Oh, leave that, love. I'll do the washing up after you've gone.
All right, I did say I'd be at the hospital at 2 o'clock. I should be back about 4.
You take your time. I don't have to leave until 6. Bob will be home before.
Well, I won't be too late. I've still got all the clothes to wash. I don't take my mind off things.
Can't I do that for you?
Oh, not with that old machine. It's on its last legs. It wasn't even new when we bought it. I'm about the only one who can make it work. You have to joggle with the plug and all sorts of things.
Had a vacuum cleaner like that. It blew out more than it sucked in.
I wanted to have an electrician to have a look at it, but Martin said it wasn't worth it. I'm pretty sure he was going to get me a new one for my birthday. I had to pretend I didn't know anything about it. Well, I'll have to wait now. I'll be living on his sick pay for the next few months at least.
Oh, but you're bound to get compensation. Well, the accident wasn't his fault, was it?
Couldn't have been. Not Martin.
Well, there you are then.
Now, you be a good girl while I'm away. And don't give Mrs. Roberts any trouble. Bye-bye, love. Bye-bye.
Are you sure you've got everything?
Pajamas, toothbrush, dressing gown. Yes, I think so.
Goodbye, love. I hope everything will be all right.
Goodbye. And thanks for all you're doing.
Susan! You mustn't play with that. It's dirty. Besides, electricity can hurt little girls.
Mary, there's something I've got to tell you. Something important. I had to do at home. It had to be done before today. Before you get hurt. Mary, please, help me before it's too late.
There doesn't seem to be any change, sister.
Well, the doctor who saw him this morning thought your husband was definitely making progress. We've been afraid of complications because of shock, you know.
When will they know? About his eyes?
Well, Mr. Hayworth, the ophthalmic surgeon, has examined him, but he can't do much until Mr. Ford recovers consciousness.
You will let me know?
Just as soon as there's any change, promise.
And whenever there's a hazard to eyesight, the men are issued with these goggles. We stock them in several different sizes so nobody complains. They don't get a proper fit. The men sign them on issue and they're told to report any defects or loss without delay.
Yes, these are made to British standard specification. They should give good protection, provided the men wear them.
Now, that's the whole point, don't you? Oh, Arthur. Mr. Blair, the factory inspector. Mr. Milson, our works manager.
How do you do?
How do you do? I'm afraid this is a bad business.
Aye.
I've shown Mr. Blair the casting shop where the accident took place.
Well, the evidence seems to show that the explosion was caused by a wet ladle. I gather you believe this was due to an error on the part of the caster, a Martin Ford.
I don't see that there's any other possible explanation.
Well, according to the information available so far, there certainly seems to be no breach of the statutory safety regulations by your company. The tragedy is that Ford wasn't wearing his safety goggles. They would at least have saved his eyesight.
Oh, Mr. Ferrer's probably explained the problem we're up against. It's the same with protective clothes. The men just won't take the trouble to get used to them, particularly if they think they're going to get in the way of their wage packets.
Oh, I know the problem's all right. It's the same as protective guards on machinery, and not just in factories. I had a case in a timber yard yesterday. An apprentice joiner was using a portable saw to cut up some wood. It was an awkward shape, so he held back the safety guard with a nail. The saw slipped and hit him in the thigh. Nearly cut his leg off.
Yeah, still, no one can blame his employer for that.
In this case, I'm not so sure. You see, the apprentice said it was the first time he'd used a portable saw. He'd had no instruction. He'd seen one of the other joiners doing the same thing with a nail, So he copied him.
Well, in that case, the man who set the bad example is partly to blame, too.
No, it's not as easy as all that, I'm afraid. Safety training is a management responsibility. Good safety training, good mechanical safeguards, plus good supervision. Then you can say it's up to the individual.
Fair enough. After all, the management can only go so far.
By the way, I didn't see any notices in the casting shop saying goggles must be worn.
Oh, Jim? Well, there are some there on the notice boards, but they've been covered up by the notices.
Oh.
It's always a problem. I'm having some larger ones made now. We're also thinking marking out the areas where the wearing of goggles is compulsory.
Good idea. Clear marking of safety areas and gangways on the shop floor is vital. Of course, you must have supervision to see that people conform.
Yes, but there'll always be the bloody fool who'll take a shortcut. After all, the men have a responsibility under the regulations as well as the management. They know perfectly well, for instance, that the goggles are issued for their protection. I don't see what more we can do. I mean, we're not nursemaids.
You could make the wearing of protective equipment a condition of employment.
The insurance people have already made that suggestion. I intend to discuss it with the shop stewards, but it won't be easy.
Well, the union is as concerned with safety as management. I'm sure neither of them find it satisfactory that a married man with a family may have lost his eyesight through an accident.
Why can't I see? What's the matter with my eyes? Please, God, take away this darkness and let me see. Mary, tell me it's not true. I'm not blind. Mary? She doesn't answer. Wonder what she's doing. Getting the supper ready, maybe. Or doing the washing. The washing. That machine. Today was going to be the last time she used it. I'd already looked at the new automatic in the shop. There was something about the old machine. Something I had to do. My God, that's it. The plug. No. The wire. Yes, it was bare. I noticed it over the weekend. I remember thinking, there's no hurry. She won't be using the machine before today. Well, if she plugged it in while her hands are wet, she'll kill herself. I've got to stop her. Somehow. Don't let her plug it in. Please, Lord. Stop her. Mary! 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 Mary!
Dr. Homer.
Hello, Mrs. Ford. I'm on my way to the surgery, but I'm a bit early, so I thought I'd just look in and see how you are.
Come in, Doctor.
Mary? I want my wife.
You lay still, love. She'll be coming.
There you are, my dear. Your pills. Take 2 of those before you go to bed, and they'll help you to sleep.
Thank you very much, Doctor. No, Susan, they're not for you.
No, if you wet those, young lady, you'll get a nasty pain in your tum. You'd better lock 'em up out of harm's way. I say, look at this. This wire's bare. It's terribly dangerous.
Is it? Oh, I know the plug's been giving a lot of trouble, but I didn't realize what it was.
Oh, no, you certainly can't use it like this. You'll get a bad shock, and if your hands were wet, it could kill you.
I never thought it was dangerous. Oh, well, I'll just have to wash that lot by hand.
No, wait a minute. It won't take long. I'll fix it for you. Have you got a small screwdriver?
Well, there should be one over here. Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a fool about these things. Here we are.
It's quite a simple job, so long as you know how. But as far as electricity is concerned, if you're not sure, you must call in an expert immediately. Thank you. You know, when I was a young doctor in casualty, more people were brought in because of accidents in the home than for any other reason.
I always thought that road accidents...
Oh, yes, they get the publicity. But the home, where everyone thinks they're safe, far more dangerous.
I shouldn't think it possible.
Well, you see, it's not only electricity, it's burns and cuts and falls and poisonings and scalding. You know, I've got a young patient, she's 10 now, who was scalded with boiling water when she was 6, and she's still receiving hospital treatment.
Oh, how dreadful. Of course, you've got to watch them all the time. If I turn my back for a minute, Susan's up to some mischief.
Well, it's a combination of training and supervision, until they're old enough to supervise themselves.
I've tried to teach her properly. She knows she mustn't play with matches or gas taps or anything like that.
Yes, but then you mustn't run away with the idea that Accidents in the home only happen to children. They can happen to anybody if they're careless. Well, now, let's see if it works. Would you mind switching on for me? Yes, that's safe enough now.
Thank you, Doctor. You see, Martin usually...
Mary, it's the hospital.
Martin?
No, not to worry. No, they rang to say he'd recovered consciousness.
There are so many gaps. Things still aren't clear. Somehow, that ladle got wet. I didn't make a mistake. It's not possible. It was just before the dinner break. I remember looking at my watch and thinking to myself, I've just got time to get some more in if I get to move on. I'd asked old Frank, you know Frank, the storeman, to make me some tea to go with the sandwiches you'd given me. I wasn't eating in the canteen. Trying to save money.
For the new washing machine.
You guess then?
You shouldn't have collected all those catalogues.
And I never could keep anything from you for long, could I? Anyhow, Frank said something about keeping the kettle warm. I wasn't paying much attention. And I went to get the ladle and... the kettle. That's it. The kettle. I remember seeing it out of the corner of my eye. It was lifted off the pot before I got the ladle. Mary, ring the foundry. Talk to Mr. Farrow. That's how it happened. It must be.
Oh! Mrs. Ford just phoned from the hospital. Martin's conscious.
Oh, great.
He's been talking about the accident.
And?
I'll show you. And that's the way water got on the ladle.
We stopped people putting their kettles there years ago. That's what we put the gas rings in for, but they brew up.
Martin insists there was a kettle here just before the explosion.
Well, I have occasionally had to bawl somebody out for trying to put their kettle on the pot, but that's a long time ago.
Could happen.
Yes, I suppose so.
Oh, look, I'm not blaming you, Bob. I mean, you can't have eyes in the back of your head.
I wish to God I had, then maybe this accident would never have happened.
Who makes the tea for the casters?
Well, anybody who's available, usually. One of the storemen, Frank Burrell.
Is he around now?
No, he's gone over to the store to fetch some metal.
I will send him along to my office as soon as he gets back. I want to talk to him.
Well, a long time ago, they used to put the kettles on the pot to boil, but you shouted at them, and Mr. Crowther, he shouted at them, and they stopped putting them on it when we got to Gastry.
Did you ever put a kettle there?
No, I never put no kettle on there, not after it was strictly forbidden.
You're sure someone didn't put a kettle there yesterday morning?
There was definitely no kettle there at the time of the accident. I'd have seen it.
All right, thank you, Barrel.
Besides, I took it away.
You took it away?
Yeah. You know, the kettle that was there earlier on.
Oh, what time would this be?
Oh, I don't remember that. It was sometime in the middle of the morning.
And you didn't put it there?
No, it just sort of appeared, you know, and when Martin asked me to make him a cup of tea, well, I took it away before the foreman or anyone else could see it, but I never put it there.
You mustn't blame old Frank Burrell too much. He's a bit simple.
Not blame him. How can you say that after what's happened to you?
Well, you see, it was partly my fault, you see. I should have been wearing my safety goggles.
But that's nothing to do with the accident. The cause of the accident.
Look, I always knew there was a chance of an explosion. We all did. I mean, it's like crossing the road. Dangerous if you don't watch out. I just never thought that it could happen. Not to me. sorry, love.
Don't.
For doing this to you. And Susan.
I thought we managed to stamp out that bloody kettle business years ago.
So did I. Mind you, it's difficult to get any sense out of Barrow, but I'm pretty certain that's why the ladle was wet.
And I've been trying to put the blame on Ford. Have you advised the insurance company?
Yes, of course. And I've spoken to the foreman. He's having the gas ring moved right out of the casting shop. There'll be no more kettles there from now on. And if we'd done that from the start, this accident would never have happened.
Maybe we've all been a bit too complacent. I ought to have taken a tougher line over the wearing of goggles. Well, I certainly intend to tomorrow, when I meet the shop stewards.
It's so easy to be wise after the event.
Well, let's face it. It's the first major accident we've had in this foundry for years, isn't it?
Still one too many. I've been doing some reading since the accident happened. And the figures are pretty alarming. You know, more people have been killed and injured in this country in the past 5 years through accidents of all sorts than there were by the bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Go on.
Yeah, makes you think.
I think we must be mad, all of us, to let it go on. Start raving bloody mad.
Ah, there you are, Mrs. Ford. I've been waiting for you to arrive.
My husband, where is he?
He's in the operating theatre.
Operating
Now,
theatre?
don't worry, Mrs. Ford. Now, Dr. Holmes is in my office and he wants to talk to you.
But your neighbour said you were out. I'd gone to my sister's.
Ah, there you are, Mrs. Ford.
Dr. Homer, what's happening?
Oh, please don't worry. Thank you, sister. Mr. Hayworth examined your husband this morning.
What did he say?
Well, in one way, the report was not too good. You see, he can do nothing to save the right eye. The damage is too severe.
I see.
But he's very hopeful about the other eye. The eyelid was badly burnt, but the eye itself seems to have escaped major injury.
You mean he'll be able to see?
There's every hope. And that's why they've decided to do a skin grafting operation on the eyelid straight away.
When will they know the results?
Quite soon. Certainly not more than a week.
So Ford will get compensation.
Well, it's a bit early to say, but in view of what you told me about the kettle, I should say it's a certainty. Pretty substantial, too, I should think. Mind you, any damages for the eye injury are bound to be reduced because he wasn't wearing his goggles. He's got to accept some responsibility.
At least one good thing's come out of all this. I met the shop stewards this morning, and they've agreed to our making the wearing of goggles a condition of employment. The management will have the right to dismiss anyone who's caught not wearing them in the safety area.
Caught being the operative word.
Yeah. Were they difficult to convince?
I had to make some concessions. You see, most of the casting jobs were timed before the wearing of goggles was made compulsory. So now I've agreed to retime them, taking the goggles into account.
Personally, I don't accept they do slow the men down. Not once they get used to them.
Well, at least I've managed to persuade both the board and the union that safety is as important as productivity and pay packets. I mean, after all, we're all collectively responsible.
Yes. Tell me, what's the latest news of Ford?
Well, he's definitely lost one eye, but they've operated on the other.
We're hoping to hear from the hospital at any moment.
But even if they save the eye, that's not the end of it. His face is badly burned. He's got months, even years of plastic surgery ahead of him.
Does his wife know that?
I don't think so. Not to the full extent. The only thing that interests her at the moment is whether he'll be able to see again at all.
Yes. That's always the tragedy in cases like this. A long-term effect on the family. A young man is horribly mutilated, almost blinded, largely because of a moment of carelessness, perhaps on the part of somebody else. But it's not only his own suffering. There's his wife who's going to have a semi-invalid on her hands. A man maimed and disfigured for life, instead of the man she married. And there's his daughter, who's going to grow up with a father she's embarrassed to introduce to her friends. No money in the world can compensate for that.